Thank you. First of all, I like short speeches, so I'll try to keep this one short for you. I only have 2 pages in big print. So that's us. We've been around for the last 40 years, actually since 1977, the same year that Via Rail was created. We were originally called Transport 2000 Canada, but of course, after the year 2000, the name started to age with the years. So we always had a newsletter that was called Transport Action, so it was obvious just to adopt that. Our mission basically is to seek sound public transportation, especially modernizing the intercity passenger rail. We have chapters in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, the Prairies, and BC. We have connections, obviously, with NEORN that we've been involved with a lot, as well as CAPT, SWOTA, which is Southwestern Ontario group, and RAIL, which is down in Sarnia. And in Quebec, we have a group called Transport sur Rail au Québec, which is in the greater Quebec City area. And there's another group called Trajectoire, which is in Quebec, which used to be called Transport 2000 Quebec. But they basically went their own way about 15 years ago, but we still collaborate with them. Now then, that's basically what I just talked about. Now, we all know this map, right? That's what we want to achieve here in Northern Ontario. But I'm from the south, and I'm not going to come up here and tell you guys what you can do. You're far ahead of us in not only devising what is doable, but I really appreciate the connections you've made on an ongoing basis with the Indigenous communities across Northern Ontario. We think that is key. But I want to present a slightly different map, this one, because one of our concerns is the absolutely abysmal performance of the Canadian across Canada. I was recently talking to a member just earlier this week, and he said, you know, a year and a half ago, I took the Canadian. It arrived 19 hours late in Vancouver. This is not uncommon. You're lucky if it arrives only 4 hours late. And there's many reasons for that. I'm not going to go into them. But I do want to talk about basically the places that I've highlighted there and why we should actually switch to the CP line. You, the older folks, will remember that we used to have, before the creation of VIA, and for the first 13 or 14 years of VIA, we used to have 2 transcontinental trains. The Canadian, which ran on the CP line, and the Supercontinental that ran on the CN line. Lo and behold, in 1990, they said, no, we're not going to give VIA enough money to run both trains. They're only going to run one. We love the name the Canadian better, but we're going to put it on the CN line. Well, here are the reasons we should switch to the CP line. First of all, once you get to Sudbury, if you're on the CN line, you actually bypass Sudbury, and you have to get off at a place called Sudbury Junction, where there's no transit, and hope you've either got somebody to pick you up or can grab a cab. When you take the CP line, you end up with a downtown station. Now then, going west, you also, on the CP line, instead of running endlessly through Jack Pine Forests, you actually get to see the beautiful scenery on the north shore of Lake Superior, because the CP line goes right along there. That will be a huge boon to VIA's ability to attract tourists to this line. Thirdly, you pick up more population centers. Thunder Bay, Dryden, Kenora, they haven't had a train since 1990, when that service on the CP line was killed. And the other really important thing is that there's less freight traffic on the CP line through Northern Ontario than on the CN line. That means fewer conflicts with freight trains and the chance that the trains will arrive more on time, if not exactly on time. And the other thing is that if you actually stay on the CP line until past Winnipeg to Regina and then go up to Saskatoon, you have the potential to add Brandon and Regina to the pool of customers that basically VIA can call upon to fill its trains. That's what this means. You know, 170,000 people in the Sudbury area, 121,000 in Thunder Bay, 19,000 in Kenora and Dryden, 310,000 just in Northern Ontario that you're adding to their pool of potential customers. I'm a former director of advertising. To me, customers are the way you build a business, as Karina was talking about earlier this morning. And if you add in Regina and Brandon, you've got another 250,000 people. And I'm eliminating all the places along the way. So that's a project that we in Transport Canada Transport Action are developing. Yeah, that's the one downside in our new, oh, are you with Transport Canada? No, it's Transport Action Canada. In fact, we're thinking of just calling ourselves Transport Action and forgetting the Canada and the Ontario and all that stuff. But now then, yeah, I know. Why am I putting that map up? Just to make you angry? No, I know. This is the GO network as it exists now. There are 7 rail lines. There's a slew of bus lines that are not only feeder lines into the rail network, but also go directly into centers and don't connect with the rail lines. But why I brought this up is because this all started. I just gave a presentation in Quebec City to a conference there on the GO network. This started with one line that ran between Burlington and Pickering. It was called Lakeshore West and Lakeshore East, although it was one continuous train that went through. Every few years, they added on another service, whether it was, on the now called the Kitchener sub. Back then, it was the Georgetown sub. They added on. The point I want to get across is you are choosing the right process. Build in stages. For me, what is essential, my humble view from the south, is that getting the Northlander back operating is project number 1. Because the tracks are in decent shape. They're good enough for freight. There may be some improvements that have to be made to get decent travel times for the passenger train, but Northern Ontario needs that line, and they need a connection to Toronto, because whether we like it or not, that's a market that people want to go to, but also people want to come from. And so for me, that's project number 1. But that's basically why I have this here. This took 40 years to build, this network. You're going to have to look at staging. What victories can we do? I mean, to me, there are rules to be followed. One is never give up, because sometimes it's discouraging. I mean, we've been beating our heads against the wall with the federal government for the last 10 to 15 years that VIA's equipment is falling apart. Well, finally, we got an announcement a couple of months ago that they're going to give VIA enough money to basically buy 32 new train sets. That means, and they're going to operate in the Quebec City to Windsor corridor. That means they can get rid of or move elsewhere a lot of their LRC equipment. And I'm certain that Sylvain here will be quite interested. They just issued the request for qualifications, which means that it's the second last stage in choosing a supplier. So they had a whole bunch of people basically offer them their services on train equipment. Now they're going to narrow it down through this request for proposal, probably to 3 or 4 potential suppliers. And then they will get asked to actually respond to the request for proposal. And then one of those will be chosen. It could be a mixture. In other words, the supplier of the coaches may be different from the supplier of locomotives, but that's up to the government to decide. They've got people, and that's up to the suppliers to do a good sales pitch and say, look, this is what we can provide. And I know you may have heard, Sylvain, when we want me talking about this, you may have heard that Toronto has had some problems with the delivery of its streetcars. But I'll also tell you that that same plant in Thunder Bay has been delivering rail cars, coaches, for years, on time, good quality, over 1,000 of them around this continent. They're running on the West Coast in the States. They're running, that's what GO Transit uses every single day, those bi-level coaches, to get people around the greater Toronto-Hamilton area. So never give up, never surrender, work together. Try to reduce internal squabbles, and also bring in new people. Keep bringing in new people. Ask people, could you be on this subcommittee? It's really important to keep building your network of connections out. And this conference is obviously a great opportunity for that. Focus on the goal. So set a plan. Say, this is what we want to achieve. Set even a time frame. You're not going to meet it, but still set one. Because that's how working to goals, talking politicians into doing the right thing is sometimes very frustrating. And always remember that victory is achievable. And I just thought I'd suggest a name. If they can spend all this money on GO Transit in the South, why can't we have something called GO North in the North? And folks, oops. Yes, but they now have a GO train, so they don't need they don't need it. But the people in Huntsville and Bracebridge, which I used to consider sort of southern Ontario, but now is being defined as the north, they need this service. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to come and talk to me or send me an email for more information, I'm also in a little bit of a dispute with a sort of an internal fight. And so if you are a member of Transport Action or do want to join in the next couple of days, I have proxy forms that I'd ask you to sign, and we can win the victory, because there's a small group of people who want to split the Ontario chapter off from the national chapter. And that's all I will say. Thank you very much.